We are going to start off by going over a little bit of housekeeping, so I'm sure you all have some questions. Just so that you know, I will be here for the remainder of class, and afterward, if anybody has any questions, please let me know, or if you feel more comfortable emailing me, go ahead and do it that way. But let's go ahead and get started. So just as a friendly reminder, everybody should have gotten an email on Friday just reminding you of everything that you're supposed to be doing this week. So number one, after this panel is done, next Monday, or this upcoming Monday, I should say, you will all have a reflection essay due per the instructions on the essay. There are some questions that you can ask yourself in order to answer the essay, but you do not have to answer every single question on there. There is no page limit or minimum or anything like that. So long as you feel like you did a good reflection and you shared what you got out of this panel, then that is sufficient. Also, your one-on-one mentor meeting, that should be a minimum of 30 minutes, preferably in person with your mentor sometime this week. It is yours and your mentor's responsibility to schedule that outside of class time. So if your mentor hasn't scheduled that with you yet, please reach out to them because it is due by Monday and it is worth 10 points. Awesome. If anybody has any questions about attendance, because I do see on our attendance, some people do also have some repeating absences that I'm a little concerned about, so please check your attendance and get back to me if you have any questions. But with that, I will turn it over to Bethany and she will go ahead and introduce our panelists for today.
All right, hi everybody. This is the third week you've seen me. After this week, I promise you probably won't see me as much anymore. For today, we do have some of our EURAP ambassadors and peer advisor that will be answering some questions about their research experience here at UCI. I have some preset questions, and then hopefully at the end, if we have time, you can go ahead and ask them your own personal questions that you might have about research. So with that, let's go ahead and introduce them. So first we have Katie, Alyssa, Kostub, and Lucia. If you'd like to go ahead and go for it, introduce yourself a little bit more, and then we'll get started.
Hello, my name is Kostub Simha. I'm a second year, double majoring electrical engineering and applied physics, and I work in the Quantum Materials and Devices Laboratory here on campus with Professor Luis Jauregui.
Hi, I'm Katie. I'm a second year biosci major. And I work in 2 research projects, so one in the lab in the School of Medicine, and then one as a club-based research with the Free Clinic.
Hi, my name is Nusha. I'm a 4th year business administration major, and I'm conducting independent research within the School of Business.
This is Alyssa. I'm a 4th year nursing science major. I'm conducting research on maternal and fetal outcomes with a nursing professor here on campus.
Perfect. All right, thank you. So let's go ahead and get started with our first question. So can you please briefly describe what you did or do as a student researcher? And you can go ahead and start, Alyssa.
Yeah, so briefly mentioned before, but I work with improving maternal and fetal outcomes here in Orange County. So right outside our doors, there's many people that don't have the conventional access to healthcare. So what my research does is that we find ways for them to have improved access to various programs, and as well as perform literature research to determine how certain things such as exercise, as well as sleep and mindful breathing can help in improving just maternal outcomes in general, such as high blood pressure.
So like I mentioned, my research is in business administration. So what I'm doing right now is an independent study where I'm taking a look into student experiences with highly selective and elite accounting internships. So this kind of combines business, but also a bit of sociology because that's what my professor is kind of trained in. And then it also has a little bit of accounting to it as well. And since I do independent research, I primarily am conducting interviews and then I transcribe those and analyze them.
So my main research is the club-based research that I do. That's what I do EURAP with. So there we are a group of undergrad students who go into the free clinic nearby in Orange County, and we volunteer as well as pass out surveys to collect information on health literacy. So our main project focuses on seeing how different socioeconomic factors such as income, access to healthcare, ethnicity, etc., can influence the health literacy that adult populations have here in Orange County.
As I mentioned before, I work in a quantum materials and devices laboratory. My research specializes in I work on 2 different projects. One of them is trying to make smaller and better transistors, which are kind of like neurons from your brain. So the idea is to make better computers in the future. Another one is trying to move electrons using sound waves. And what I do specifically is actually make the devices where I realize this phenomenon. So I gather the material and talk to my professors, talk to my graduate students, fabricate the devices, design what we need to do, and kind of take the measurements we need to do. And yeah, I get a lot of different types of involvement in my projects.
Great, thank you. All right, let's go ahead and move on to the second question. What experience do you have with EURAP?
So as a second year, I don't have much experience with EURAP other than I got a job here this year. But last year, I got a chance to present at the May Symposium, and I got a chance to win the Chancellor's Award of Excellence in undergraduate research for my projects on the transistors that I was talking about.
So I'm also second year, so I've only had 1.5 years experience so far. But I also presented at the last symposium in May for 2023. And then I've had experience applying for EURAP funding both for last year and this year, as well as SERP over the summer.
Yeah, so unfortunately, I also have kind of limited experience with EURAP. I know that when I was reaching out to a professor, I used a resource very similar to what EURAP has with their email templates for faculty, so things like that are very useful. And then I do plan to present at this year's symposium as well.
When I actually first started research, I actually found my faculty mentor through the EURAP site, just checking to see which professors had research in the fields that I was interested in. So I was able to utilize EURAP for that resource, as well as also being able to submit abstracts and proposals, and ultimately gain the EURAP and SERP Summer Undergraduate Research Program fellowships and grants for 2021 and 2022, as well as this year.
Okay, thank you. All right. How did you find your faculty mentor? As these folks are starting their journey, we've shared in the previous GIR that they can have an application or emailing the professor, but we're just curious, is that something you did, or was there a different process for yourself?
Yeah, so I absolutely emailed my professor. I was a freshman in COVID, so we didn't have any classes in person or anything like that. I really didn't get the chance to meet any professors, but as I said kind of briefly earlier, I reached out and I found professors in the field that I enjoyed. So for me, that was just the underserved community and be able to help in those populations. And a big one is pregnancy. So that being said, I was able to find my faculty mentor. I've been with her ever since. I basically just emailed her and I was like, hi, I really like your research. I have a passion in this and I want to have something to do with this in the future. Will you please let me on your team? And thankfully she said yes. But emailing does work, guys.
Yeah, so I had kind of a similar thing. So when I decided that I wanted to do research, I decided that I wanted to stay within business. And then I also decided that I wanted to do a specific area of business called organization and management. So I went on the faculty website and I had not had any classes with any of the faculty who did research in organization and management. So I was basically forced to kind of cold email. So I used a template and I made sure that I did a lot of research on the professor that I was choosing to reach out to. And I got really lucky because she reached out to me very quickly and we set up an appointment and we talked about her research and what I was hoping to do. And since our interests lined up and the timeline worked out for her, she agreed to be my mentor.
So as I mentioned in the beginning, I'm part of 2 different research projects. So for my first one, which is in the lab in the School of Medicine with the Biomedical Research Facility, for that one, I just went on this site called Bio 199 Research Dashboard. So for all my biosci majors out there, you can just look up on the internet. It says biosci 199, and it gives you a long list of all the faculty that are open for positions in their labs, and they have really awesome descriptive descriptions about like what they do in the lab, what they are looking for. So I was able to sign up through that. And then for my club-based research, I was lucky enough to join the club that already had an advisor who was willing to be our faculty for EURAP proposals.
So I actually started doing my research first quarter of my freshman year. And I didn't actually meet my faculty mentor at the beginning. I actually met my grad student that I do my surface acoustic wave project with. I met him. He was actually my TA for my 7LC lab. And ever since then, I kind of had a couple conversations with him, got coffee with him, and he gave me a lab tour and kind of fell in love. And ever since then, I've never left. So.
Great. Thank you so much for sharing. Let's go ahead and go to the next question. How is research different from classroom learning?
I think with the research, at least for me, I get a chance to kind of explore all my interests. In class, there's a set agenda. There's certain things that you're supposed to learn, and teachers are supposed to go through, the syllabus. In research, I kind of get to explore what I want to do, kind of figure out what everybody else is working on, and get a lot more creative freedom. And it's more of a platform for me to make mistakes and grow from it. Versus in class, I don't feel as comfortable doing that.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I think the biggest difference is how hands-on research is. So in the classroom, you have a set syllabus, you have set assignments. There's not much you can do with your creative process and abilities. But with research, you get to ask your own questions, ask your own proposals, and also found out that in research, I'm able to connect with people more since we're all asking questions, we're all sometimes confused about what's going on. So it gives us a platform to be able to connect with each other, help each other out. So I definitely have a community with my research lab.
For me, since I'm doing independent research, I find it to be really different from classes because I have one 30-minute weekly check-in with my professor, and otherwise it's pretty much up to me to schedule my interviews and transcribing things and then any other ways that I want to kind of supplement my research. So it's kind of a double-edged sword because on one hand, it's really self-driven and I'm doing a project that I picked and I work one-on-one with a professor, but also things go wrong sometimes. There's no syllabus that you're following, so it's very trial and error, but ultimately it's a really great learning experience.
Yeah, so my research is actually somewhat individualized, somewhat small team based. So that being said, it's still very different from classroom setting. Even though I'm in like a cohort, it's still really only like working with 2 or 3 more people and maybe your faculty mentor chiming in with ideas and concepts and things we might want to think about. So that being said, I get to know my faculty mentor really well. I'm able to build a relationship with her. I'm able to even just ask her questions that I otherwise might not have been able to. And she listens to me, so she will actually take into account my questions and my just thoughts and how maybe something I want to change. She actually listens to those, and that's really cool because you don't necessarily get that one-on-one interaction and just focus that you do in a classroom setting. And you get to know your team very well too, and just how they work and what works best for you guys.
Perfect, thank you. All right, let's go to the next one. So how does research experience relate to your future academic or career goals?
Yeah, so I study to work in a healthcare-based field, and nursing is one of those majors that continuously develops as research is advanced. So the more research that comes out, the more that the nursing protocols and the standards change to fit those that are best for overall patient care as well for the healthcare team. So that being said, research in general just plays a really big role in how nursing is run and how I can be the best nurse that I can be. And I also plan to go to grad school in the future, so research is always great to have on your application and your resume because it shows that you really care about the further progress and development of the field. And it just gives me a sort of an edge into when I actually have to do research projects in graduate school.
So I am planning to go into accounting after I graduate, which is why I chose to do my research and look at different accounting professionals and experiences with accounting internships. So in that aspect, it does kind of relate to the career that I have planned for myself because I'm talking to a lot of people, I'm networking with them, but it is also very different, and I kind of see that as a good thing because on one hand I'm learning more about that field, but I'm also branching out a little bit and getting a more well-rounded view of business and research in general. So I think in both ways it's really helpful.
Yeah, I agree. I know in the future I'm hoping to be in a healthcare career as well, where I'm talking to patients every day, hopefully children. So I think my research experience really helps in terms of learning how to talk to people and connect to people. Since my club-based research is clinical, where we're going into the free clinic and we're passing out surveys to patients ourselves, I definitely learned a lot of interpersonal skills where I know how to talk to people, how to ask them questions, how to make them feel comfortable being in the clinic, alleviate stress in the waiting room, and so on. So it really helps me connect to people in that way.
So, after doing research, I kind of decided that I wanted to get a PhD in hard condensed matter physics, which is exactly the type of things that I work on. And I met the best mentors, I've met great experiences, and it seems like this is what I want to do. I want to be in the forefront of technology and discover new devices and new ways of applying electricity.
Thank you. So how have you grown professionally from your research experience?
from my research experience, I got a chance to go to a couple different conferences and talk to experts on topics that I work on. And this kind of gave me a better idea of, well, how to present what I'm working on. Kind of gave me great feedback on the type of things that I'm working on and the projects that I'm doing. It also gave me a better idea of what I could do and what type of skills I could pick up to become a better researcher. And honestly, it's all about presenting yourself and presenting your work. And that's a skill that I had to develop and had to work on, because you could be the best engineer, you could be the best physicist, but if you can't explain what you're talking about, what you're working on, it doesn't really speak to it.
Yeah, I think one of my biggest benefits professionally from my research is networking skills. So since, again, my research is clinical, I'm surrounded by doctors, medical assistants, nurses, a whole bunch of healthcare professionals. So it's really cool to be able to observe them and ask them questions. And I wouldn't have been able to get that one-on-one experience with them if I wasn't in the research that I'm in. So I'm really, that's really valuable for me.
Yeah, I think in terms of professional growth, the network is a really big aspect of it. I mean, with my research too, since I conduct interviews, I'm talking to a lot of people who I otherwise wouldn't have met. They're all in accounting, so professionally that can be really valuable. And you also tend to meet a lot of faculty or people doing research, so that can be really useful as well. And I think generally you build up your interpersonal skills a lot because you get more practice talking to professors or other students, so all of that can be really valuable in terms of your professional growth.
Yeah, I definitely agree with everything that they said already. I think I would just like to, ditto the fact that for me, it's very much so being able to talk to people, talk to those that might have, I don't want to say more authority, but are just higher up in the rank for you. Because for me, for nurses, that's the doctors for me. So being able to talk to my research professor in a professional way is very valuable and can easily translate over to talking to doctors or even just talking to nurse managers and just anybody else in the field in general. They feel a lot of respect when you talk to them professionally. So even if they're not above you in a certain way, it just makes them feel like they're also being heard. And I think I also been able to present at conferences as well. So being able to build up that public speaking skill, being able to realize how to talk about your research in a way that can impact people and really show the world that what you've been doing is important and they should listen to it. That is super important just in general for not only research but life and just anything that you have a desire and a passion for.
Great, thank you. All right, so same tone, but this one's personal now. So how have you grown personally from your research experience?
Yeah, I think as I've been doing research for almost 3 years now, we've definitely run into various challenges as research does, because you are developing something new or you're looking into something that hasn't been looked into as much before. And as such, there's always going to be some sort of setback, but that just means that you keep pushing, you find new ways, you adapt new methods of being able to find a solution to whatever you're trying to solve. So that being said, adaptability has been huge for me, just being able to go with the flow, meet deadlines despite any difficulties, or be okay with changing things up every now and then. I've also grown a lot in communication and just being able to talk to my research professor and be like, hey, I have an idea, there's something I want to do, what do you think? And being able to take feedback as well is really important. Being able to adapt from that and grow from that and not just be stuck in my own ideas, I think has also been really big for me.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest skills that I've built up doing research is resilience, because I had an initial research topic and a research kind of project that ultimately didn't pan out. And in my case, I basically had to scrap that and start and do a completely new thing, which can be kind of scary and it's a little daunting. And on one hand, it felt like maybe I just wasted my time and I made a silly mistake, but really it's a building block and it's taking you towards something that can actually end up being fruitful and giving you like the research experience that you want or the results that you're looking for. And then I think also it's taught me to deal with criticism a lot better, because sometimes I will show my professor my transcripts and she'll say, well, why didn't you ask this? Or I show her my analysis and she's like, I don't think that that's quite right. And it's not, you can't take it personally. You have to understand that this is just part of the process. And I've really built up that kind of inner strength through doing research.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing I've picked up personally is that it's okay to not know right away. I used to be that student in the back of the class who would not raise my hand even if I was like extremely confused. And I still am the student sometimes. But I definitely learned from my research group that it's okay to ask questions and to be confused. We all have different points of views and we see the same research topic in different angles. So talking about it, having those conversations, saying, hey, listen, I'm confused. What do you think it is? It's really helpful. So I'm really grateful that my research group emphasized that for me and I'm able to feel that way now.
For me, my research kind of gave me a better idea of the type of environment that I thrive in, I should strive for. I realized that I'm really good in a quiet, hands-on environment like my laboratory. So that's what I'm going to look for in my future career, in my professional area. It also gave me an idea of the type of people I want to be around. I want to be around healed, striving, hardworking people. And I made great mentors, I've made best friends, and everybody I've ever met in the lab or going out to these conferences has been really nice, and I've learned a lot from them. For me, another thing that I really picked up on is that there's always something to learn. In any environment, there's always someone out there that has something that could offer you, and you could sit there and you could learn from each other. And that was a really valuable lesson for me.
All right, thank you. So I'm going to go ahead and transition to my last question that I have for you all. Do you have any last words of advice for our research discovery program students?
I think one last word of advice for me is just go out there and just talk to people. Just ask questions, be curious, see what's out there, have an open mind, and welcome every opportunity. You never know what might stick, and be grateful for those that don't. Be grateful for the opportunities that don't fan out. It's okay. Just move on.
Yeah, I'd reiterate that. So I was a freshman last year. It still feels like I am sometimes. So I have that feeling of being at a new school and not knowing what's going on. It's pretty recent still. So I would say that push through that. It's difficult sometimes. But never like sell yourself short. So just reach out for all the opportunities you have. You never know what might come through. And you'll never have a negative outcome from trying. It can only be positive. So yeah, don't hold yourself back.
Yeah, so coming from me being a business major, I think something that everyone should be aware of is that you can do research no matter what field you're in. You can stick with your own field like I did and, do that. You can do it in any field that interests you, and no matter what field you're in, you can do it. So like if you're like me, you can do it in business, you could do it in art, theater, whatever interests you. And UCI and EURAP makes it so accessible that any one of you can go out and just get involved, and I really think you all should.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I'm technically part of nursing research, but it's not really in the field that I want to go do nursing in. So I'm in kind of the more maternal fetal side, but I want to go into like ED trauma. So it's very different, but it's still very relevant because it's something that I have a passion for, and I think that you can make a lot of change in that. So I think one last word of advice from me is just, if you have a passion for it, it doesn't really matter if it's in your school, it doesn't really matter what other people tell you. Like, if you can find some research professor that has that same passion as you, they will be able to tell that you have that passion too. When you go out and you talk to them and you're like, I have a passion for this field, they can see that, and odds are they'll probably let you in because of that, just because you have that passion. And sharing that passion in a research team is amazing. Like, everyone is like-minded, you're all searching for the same goal. So if you have a passion, really just go for it. Just like they said too, like, you can't really gain anything bad from it. You can only gain something that'll either bring you to the next step or that'll be your ticket in automatically to research. So yeah.
All right, thank you everyone. Let's see. So now I actually want to open it up for a general Q&A. It could be specific questions to a specific person or general questions. So if you have a question, go ahead and raise your hand and then we can go from there. Yes, right here. Go for it.
Just like across like all four of you, could you like describe like how much like commitment you put in like on average? Because I know you guys are all like in different disciplines, so I just want to know the difference.
Yeah, I actually think that it changes even within the discipline. I think it really depends on what type of research you do. For me, and I assume for Nusha too, we kind of build our own schedule because it's more independent, small team, meet up with your mentor. But I assume if you're in a lab, you can attest to this, it's probably more set hours where you have to have certain access. So for me, it really changes on the week depending on how many projects we have going at one time and just what needs to be done and what deadlines need to be met. I would say can range anywhere from an hour to 5, really, depending on, I know that's not super helpful, but it really changes. And I know other people in my major doing different types of research also have a very different schedule. So it really depends.
Yeah, so right now I'm in the early stages, so I spend maybe a few hours a week kind of just doing interviews and transcribing them, but I think as it progresses, like it just really can depend on what phase you're in and what you're doing. Once I have to do more of like analysis and stuff, it'll probably be more. But again, it's really flexible. I couldn't tell you how many hours because I don't really keep track. It just is whatever it ends up being in a given week.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think with my lab-based research, it's probably more since I am gonna start getting credits for that research. So once you do apply for units to get with your research lab, you do this fixed amount of hours. So I think right now I'm doing maybe 12 hours for that. But it's not as daunting as it sounds. I actually get to do both in-person and remote work. So not all of the 12 hours are in the lab working, going to the school. I can also sit at home in the comfort of my house and do remote work. And then with my club-based research, again, it varies a lot. So if it's a week where we're going into the clinic, getting surveys passed out, it might take longer, maybe 3 or 4 weeks. But if it's just one of those weeks where we have a meeting, we're just checking in with each other, maybe just an hour. So definitely depends on what type of research and what phase you're in.
Yeah, I kind of want to echo what everybody else was saying. It's also about the quality of the time you're spending than the quantity. You know, sometimes I've been in the lab for like 2 hours and I was not as productive as the hour I spent the day before. But right now, I'm spending actually a lot of hours because I have a conference coming up in a month or so. But other than that, it just depends and varies on what my professor's expectations are. And so it's a matter of communicating with them and seeing what their expectations is, what the progress is, what needs to be done before we have to present, publish, or whatever. So it really varies week by week.
Thank you. Any other questions? Yeah, back there.
You guys all seem really passionate about what you do, so I was wondering, like, did you ever have imposter syndrome? Like, did your mentor or group sort of like guide you through things you didn't know how to do, or
Is that like directed towards a specific person, or you want?
towards all of you?
Okay, all the time. Like you're surrounded by like people that are like 10 years older than you. That like they're about to get PhDs and professors that are from like Harvard and MIT. So yeah, all the time. They're really good at what they do, but at least the way I look at it is it's an opportunity for me to learn. It's definitely every time I go in there, I know I'm going to pick something up. Every time I give a presentation, every time I talk to them. So yeah, I mean, at the beginning it was really hard, especially the jargon that they use, like some of the words. It's like okay, but after a while, you pick things up and you learn things and you get a better idea of who they are as a person, and they start trusting you, and they start. It's a great like growth process that you're a part of.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think I feel it every time I'm going into my research though. With my clinical-based research in the free clinic, I was like, again, surrounded by so much like medical terminology. I had no clue what they were talking about, just like smile and nodded. Like, yeah, I understand. But they're super nice in terms of teaching you, allowing you that period to learn and explore, because they don't expect you to know it right away. They didn't when they were at our stage, so they're super helpful in that. With my lab-based research, I actually work with mice, so it's the first time I ever did that. It was daunting at first, but it's really nice now. And again, my PI and my research group just helps you learn through it together. Once you have that team and that support group, the imposter syndrome definitely feels much like that.
Yeah, I think even when I was like reaching out to a professor to get into research, I was just like, why would she ever even look at this? Why would she care? Why would she want me? Because I was going into my 4th year, I had no research experience, so I was thinking like, what do I bring to the table? But it's really true, they don't expect you to know everything or even that much. Like they'll understand that you're a beginner, but they just expect you to be ready to learn and be passionate enough. And I think when you are passionate about what you're doing your research in, it's easier to learn. You want to spend the time to get to know it. I mean, sometimes I don't even feel like I'm doing research, which is kind of silly because I think research is like a scary word and it sounds really abstract, but I'm like, I'm doing interviews, I'm doing research, but so it's just one of those things where I think you build it up in your mind, but when you do it, you see how accessible it is.
Yeah, also definitely. I started as a first year in COVID. Nobody knew me. I was like, nobody wants a kid in their research group. Like, why would they want me? This is for PhD students. But I decided to try it anyways. I emailed my professor, and I think I actually had to follow up with her before she responded to me. So that in and of itself was a little scary, but because I had a passion for it, I was like, I'm gonna do it, what can I lose? And ever since then, I still did not know much about the field going into it when I first entered as a freshman. So I had to learn all the terminology, like they said. I had to kind of figure out what they were talking about. I had a whole thing of data analysis, and I was like, what are these programs? I don't know what I'm looking at. All I see is like a salad of stuff. But my faculty mentor is really, really nice, and she would even recruit like older student researchers to help explain things better in a way that I might understand. She would send me videos and send me just instructions on how to do things, and she was really, really supportive in being able to be like, okay, look, like you're new, that's completely okay. I'm gonna walk you through this process so that someday, down the line, I can go tell other student researchers how to do that too, and the people that she brings on. So it's pretty cool. It kind of goes full circle.
Any other questions? Yeah.
So you guys mentioned that at the beginning of your research there was like a hard time. What kind of like difficulties did you guys meet and how did you conquer it, and how long did you guys like to pass that period?
That's a good question. I think for me, it was the whole fact of not really knowing what exactly was happening. Just the fact that I was like, I'm in research, there should be something that I'm doing. I think even now, there are still many times to this day where I'm like, what did I just do and what am I listening to? I feel like research is one of those fields where you just simply can't know what's going on at every single moment in time, because that would kind of mean that the research is developed already. So when you're part of that process of something new, there's always going to be a sort of unknown to it, but I think that's also what makes it really cool, because you're just like, I get to be part of that whole process of creating something new, of finding something new, of just making a difference. And I think that is what continuously drives me. But yeah, I don't think that ever goes away. I think what's really important is that you continue to ask questions. And even your faculty mentor sometimes might be like, I don't know, I'll go check it out, I'll go ask some people, I'll get back to you. So no one's ever really gonna know every part of it. And I think I'm still in that process, but it's really good to just ask questions, ask good questions, don't be afraid to, because they might have that same question too, and maybe they'll go find out and they'll learn something new too. But.
Yeah, I can definitely talk about this because I mentioned, so when I was originally starting to do research with my professor, I had this topic, or this question, I guess, that I came up with that was really interesting, but it was basically needing access to a population that's really hard to reach. So I wanted to do like interviewing people working in big tech companies. And to put it bluntly, they didn't want to talk to me because like they're really busy people, and I was mostly like cold LinkedIn messaging people. It was like super creepy, honestly. And so I wasn't getting any responses. And in my case, part of the issue was also timeline, because I'm only here for one more year and I needed data. And so what ended up going on in my case is we just like scrapped that, and I came up with a new topic that was a much more accessible population, which is just accounting people, accounting students. Like I know plenty of those. So I think mine is a much more dramatic example, and since it was independent research and my professor is really open to it, we did kind of do that total overhaul. But I think generally just the takeaway is that you can't really go into it with an expectation. Be hopeful and be open-minded, and just whatever comes at you, you just have to take it, and you have to be quick, and you have to reassess and keep on moving forward. And it worked out because now my research is going much better, but it's just part of the process.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree. With my lab-based research, I think the main setback was just having everything be so new to me. I never worked with animals before, I never worked with like, medical terminology before. So I think the only thing that fixed that for me was letting myself have the time and experience to process it and learn it. You can't rush that learning process, and you shouldn't need to. So allow yourself the time to understand and explore. With my clinical research, I think last year we had a point where we were transitioning between clinics, so we didn't actually have a clinic population to do our surveys in. So we were kind of stumped for a bit, but we ended up transitioning our research to collecting surveys from undergrad students here instead. So setbacks don't have to be negative. They can be a growth point for a new direction that could end up being even closer to what you want to explore and research about. So don't be afraid about setbacks. Just take it as a positive challenge, and you can have any direction with that.
Yeah, I mean, when my first like group meeting that I ever went into, they were talking about quantum Hall effect and it's all kinds of jargon that you just don't get. And but it took, I I wouldn't say I'm like an expert in the quantum Hall effect now, but I have a better understanding than I did back then. And I think it's a process of just being there and asking questions and picking up things. And I also had someone that was patient enough with me to sit down and explain these things to me. And you know, the library has great books as well. So picking up things, reading, understanding. It's like time. It's just going in and just doing all you need to do to get what you need out of it. And yeah.
All right, looks like we have time for one more question. Anybody? Yeah, go for it.
It sounds like everyone on this panel is undergrad, correct? So are you guys doing your research more for credits, or have you guys turned this into a job? And it also sounds like you guys' schedules is very hectic. How do you guys time manage that? And any advice for us as undergrads who need help time managing?
For me, it's like more of like a career thing. I still take credits for it, but you know, I still got like internship opportunities, other type of opportunities outside of it. It's kind of what I want to do after. So I definitely, it's an easy transition for me to career. So how do I time manage? That's a question I ask myself every day. It's a hard process, but just like kind of, you know, taking it a step at a time, seeing what works with your schedule, what doesn't work with your schedule. Also having other people around me that are very flexible with me, that understand that, okay, I have these other dependencies I have to get to, but I could sit down and I can plan things with you, and then we could kind of work it all out together. So it's just, like I said, I just have a very good environment where I'm really comfortable with, and they're very flexible, and I've gotten a chance to learn and grow from them. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that. So I think research for me is like a stepping stone into what I want to go into. Like I mentioned before, I want to have a healthcare career that's talking to patients every day, maybe as a doctor or another job. So although I don't plan on doing research as a career later on, my clinical research definitely helps me understand how to talk to patients and how to learn those interpersonal skills that I want to apply in my future job. In terms of time management, still figuring that one out. But I think what really, really helps is being upfront with your faculty mentor. I know when I started getting credits for my lab-based research, I let my supervisor know, hey, like on these weekends or on these days, I have classes, I have things going on. Could I schedule myself for my free slots? And he was able to do that. Adding on to that, like I said earlier, for the times that I told him ahead of time that I was busy, he let me schedule remote work instead of coming in person. So it can definitely help to have that strong communication angle there, because as long as you communicate with them, they're more than willing usually to accommodate you and help you too, because their main goal is just to help let you explore and learn new things. So they wouldn't want to take that away from you. So definitely just be upfront and communicate, and everything should work out well.
So I started doing research because I'm in the honors program and we kind of have to. So that was what got me into it, but I have really enjoyed it. And it's been interesting because, like I said, I do plan to go into accounting, but it's also made me think that if down the line things change, I want to do something different, maybe grad school is an option, because also I didn't realize people get PhDs in business until like really recently. So now I know that's a thing that I could do. And then in terms of time management, I have a planner and I have Google Calendar, and I check them like 1,000 times a day. And that works pretty well for me. Don't overbook yourself. If you're doing undergrad research, I think that typically the faculty will understand that you're like a full-time student and they're not going to go crazy. So just know yourself and use Google Calendar.
Yeah. For me, I am thinking about potentially doing research in the future. So I want to go get a DNP, which is a doctorate in nursing practice. So after a while in the clinical field, it allows me to be able to go kind of in a clinical field as well, but have a more set schedule to dedicate the rest into research and potential new opportunities, and just conduct research in a more clinical setting. So it's really cool, and I always thought that that'd be really nice to be able to kind of fix what problems might be arising as time goes on, and kind of go and change the field in a way that'll be beneficial for everyone. Time management, I'm a very busy person. I love Google Calendar. 1,000%. I
Notion.
check that. Yeah. I check that thing way too much. I plan it down to like the 15-minute mark, but definitely for one, leave time between events to kind of just take a breather. Schedule time for yourself too. Like, don't just pack your days. I know me as second year back in person, I was like, I gotta do everything possible under the sun. Yeah, I got 24 hours a day. I'm gonna use the 24 hours a day, but you really do need that time to yourself. And they mentioned it too, but my nursing professor has been super, super good with it. She's like, do you have a test next week? Okay, yeah, we'll get back to this next week then. Like, they understand that you're a student, especially as undergrads. They want to give you this foot in the door. They want to show you a world that you don't normally get in the classroom setting as an undergrad. So they're very accommodating, and they're just like, tell me your schedule, what do you need? If you need a week off, I think a lot of them are more than willing to as well, if it means that it'll keep you like sane. So, yeah.
All right, let's go ahead and give our guest speakers a round of applause.